wanted you all to have the opportunity now, early, to hear and meet our current Lieutenant Governor of the state. Before I bring him on, I also want to acknowledge Mayor Ream, Charlie, who's over here smiling and waving, of course. He's here frequently, and I know some of you see him in his office once in a while. So, okay, I just am very honored to introduce our Lieutenant Governor, Mike Kehoe. Governor Kehoe is a born and raised kid, maybe from North City, and lived in St. Louis, and I remember one of the stories about washing cars. And he is a youngster, and his mom was a single mom at a young age and raised a bunch of kids. And I first met Governor Kehoe when he came into the Senate, maybe before then, but he was in the state Senate. I was in the House, and kind of at the end, I needed to get some things moving, and I think once he did that, at least once. But anyway, for you, all of you, just to know the main reason the office of Lieutenant Governor is a primary state office of senior service, looking and supporting seniors and veterans. So he's here today for a while. I'll quit talking, and please welcome Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe.
Well, thank you, Sue. Mr. Mayor, it's great to be here with you. The mayor said a week ago he was in a walker, so he walked upstairs with me. These doctors are good at therapy. Well, it's a pleasure. Sue did a great job as a House of Representative member in St. Louis, from the St. Louis area, and she was always a pleasure to work with. So it's very cool to be able to connect back with her here at this facility. By the way, as I told a few of you, this place is beautiful. I watched it being built. I told Sue my father-in-law doesn't live far from here, and I watched it coming out of the grounds, and I could see it was nice. And the first time I walked in today, I was like, holy cow, it's unbelievable. So congratulations on a beautiful facility. Just a few, and I'll try to leave some time for questions and answers. As Sue said, we're in our job, you're always going from one meeting to the next. I think my wife and I counted in the last 16 days, I think we've been in 32 different cities, from St. Joe to Sikeston to Kansas City to Joplin to Springfield to Branson to St. Louis to Palmyra and all points in between. So, but it's a great job to be able to travel the state. As Sue mentioned, I'm originally from North City, St. Louis. So if you ever heard of Walnut Park or Baden, that's the area. See, I heard some oh yes, so very good. And so I'm from there. My dad left when I was a year old. I was youngest of 6 children. My mom worked 3 jobs and raised us, and she was a woman just to believe if you believed in the Lord and you took advantage of opportunities, you wanted to work hard, she said you can get anywhere you want to go. And that was my mom's advice to all of her kids, and she lived that every day, and she was a real saint and inspiration in our life. When I was 15, a family friend of my mother's, whose name you'll recognize, she grew up with since grade school, was a Ford dealer in South County named Dave Sinclair. Anybody ever bought a car from Dave Sinclair? See, there's always a customer in here somewhere. That's where I know the Nardoni name, maybe. So Mr. Sinclair took me in when I was 15. He, for all practical purposes, kind of helped raise me and was an incredible mentor to me and helped me not only learn how to wash cars. Well, Dave, for instance, really never washed a car in his life, but he taught me where the wash rack was, and I went from there to selling cars and becoming his manager. I'll make this story quick. He and a bunch of Ford dealers in St. Louis owned a manufacturing company in Lynn, Missouri. When I was 25, he sent me down there to help turn that company around, and with the help of the employees and a whole bunch of people, I was able to get that company going again and ended up buying that manufacturing company. They built ambulances. And still running today with 125 employees. So I'm very proud of that company. And as I got to Central Missouri, I started to know the Ford dealer in Jefferson City, and long story short, I was able to acquire the Ford dealership because I really wanted to be a Ford dealer. Mr. Sinclair was a huge idol to me, and he was a very good man, and I thought that would be a good thing. Around the same time, I went on a blind date. 3 weeks later, I got engaged to my wife. Now, she doesn't like this joke, so I'll tell it, but I always say we've been married 10 happy years, 34 total. She hates that joke. But the reality is I met a nice young lady, and I didn't want to let her go, so we got married, and since then we've had 4 kids. So I tell everybody I believe in the miracle of life. It's an unbelievable miracle. But the bigger miracle is when the 4th one moves out of the house. And so, thank you, right? A few applause lines there. Our youngest just graduated from college, he got a job and said, you know, Dad, all my friends' parents are all crying because their daughter or their son is leaving their house and they're moving out and everything. Why are you and Mom so happy? We've been paying college tuition for 12 years, and this is the greatest day of my life. But as Sue mentioned, I'm a Ford dealer, small businessman by trade. I've been involved in lots of aspects of the Central Missouri community, including Chamber of Commerce, United Way, many veterans organizations, well before politics. I did not serve, but some of my closest friends did, and many people who worked at our dealership did. So we became very involved. Joined our American Legion Post as a son of the Legion, Roscoe Enlow Post 5, probably 30 years ago. And an opportunity came open to run for state senate, and some business people came to me in the community and said, hey, we need a business guy in the state senate, you should run. I'm like, no chance in heck. I've got young kids at the time, and I owned a business there for several years, but I hate to tell you this, I'd really never been in the Capitol. I'd shown people a few times, I inherently do not trust government, and it's nothing personal, Mr. Mayor. And I do trust doctors, though. And so, one thing led to another. Ran for a state senate seat, as Sue said, and I was fortunate enough, after being reelected, to run as our majority leader, which is the 2nd highest spot in the Senate. Very much enjoyed that, but term limits are good with me, and I was out after 8 years and fine with that. Mike Parson became our governor in some very tumultuous times back in the summer of 2018. And when Governor Parson became governor, he also had the ability to appoint a lieutenant governor, which he had held before he moved in after Governor Greitens resigned. And so he called me and asked me to do that. I said, Mike, I am not doing that. I'm done with this. We're also, Mr. Sinclair also got me very much involved in farming. I've had a farm for a cow-calf operation for 36 years. Anybody who knows me that comes from Baden, whenever they hear that, they're like, wait a minute, Kehoe has cows and calves now. But I've been a first-generation farmer. I very much enjoy that. Still work with selling cars and some other small businesses. Was not interested in being a lieutenant governor. And so I couldn't get Mike Governor Parson off the phone, and I finally said, look, I'm going to have to check with Claudia. That's my wife. And his wife, Teresa, and my wife are good buddies. And so, of course, what he said was, oh, Teresa's already called her. So the governor did an end round on me, and here I am. It's been an incredible journey. So in state senate, you have, in our case, we had 7 counties, and we traveled the counties and met people and understood what the businesses were and tried to represent it the best they could. But when you're a statewide officer, there's 114 counties plus the city of St. Louis. So we travel a lot. And we meet a lot of great people across the state, and a lot of family-owned businesses. I'm very involved in the business side of things. I love to hear people's success stories, and quite frankly, sometimes they got some failures in there. But Missourians can really create you to fall in love with them. And so my wife and I have really very much enjoyed this opportunity. I never thought I'd own my own bicycle. So be able to talk to a group like you folks are in any corner of the state representing the position I do is incredibly humbling, very, very humbling. Matter of fact, you will love my mother, who we lost a few years ago. She was alive, and Governor Parson knew what an influence she was in my life. And when I got sworn in for lieutenant governor, he said, I'm going to make arrangements for your mom to use the super secret governor elevator, and she's going to come up, and I guess it's not super secret anymore. She's going to come up to your swearing in. And I went to tell my mom, you're going to go down to the Capitol. I told her what happened. I'm the proud son. And my mom looked at me and said, why did he pick you? So it reminded me that mothers can always be very humbling any minute they want to be. So we do travel a lot and try to figure out things. Veterans issues are near and dear to my heart. As Sue mentioned, we're an advocate for veterans and seniors. A lot of the issues run parallel. Fix one for one group, you sometimes fix one for the other. We are, depending on the day measure, the state of Missouri's fifth or sixth largest state in the union for veterans at about 470,000. And so we have a large veterans population for two reasons. One, we're a very patriotic part of the country in the heart of the Midwest. But a lot of veterans end up moving here because they are stationed at Fort Leonard Wood or Whiteman or Rosecrans, our three federal bases. And if they're from the East or West Coast, they find nicer people, they find better costs of living, etc. And they might like to hunt or fish. If you're in Fort Leonard Wood, the Ozarks are beautiful. So we have a large veterans population here. So we have a Veterans Commission that's made up of 9 members, citizens from around the state that work with our 7 veterans homes, our veterans cemeteries, and our veterans service officers, where we work with veterans on what issues we can do. I know that we've had some, Sue said we've had some folks here that have been able to go on honor flight. I am a guardian on honor flight. And we're doing flight 67, August 21st. And I can tell you that, I haven't been on 67, by the way, but that has been more inspiring. I've gotten more out of being a guardian for veterans on honor flight than they'll probably ever get. So it's a great experience. I love working with our state's heroes, and that's a big plus. And on the senior side, we mainly work, there's an organization, some of you may have read about it or participated in, the Silver-Haired Legislature. They're very serious people about what policy should be put forth by seniors. And really the building reacts, as far as the Capitol building, reacts to what needs to be done for seniors. A lot of times is driven by what the Silver-Haired Legislature puts forward as their priorities. I mean, they meet in Jefferson City, they meet in the chambers of our House and Senate, they come up with legislative ideas, they turn it into action, and then usually or always a House or Senate member, sometimes both, carries their priorities. I told Sue a couple of years ago, through the help of a senator out of Berry County in the southwest corner of our state, David Sater, we passed the Senior Services Growth Protection Fund, which was a fund that we established for our area aging agencies. I call them the AAAs because it's harder to say area aging agencies. And for the first time ever, we actually got that funded this year in the budget for help with our senior centers all over the state that take care of our the people whose shoulders I stand on in this state. And so that was good. And then the governor just signed about 3 weeks ago a $309 million tax back into your pocket, a cut to all your Social Security benefits and any public pensions, all now will not be taxed in the state of Missouri. So a nice little increase for our senior population that we're super happy to see. Yeah, the legislature, you know, everybody sees or reads on TV about how partisan politics can be, and believe me, that's the worst part about it. The mayor will tell you that's the worst. Sue will tell you that's the worst part about politics, is that infighting and bickering and everything. But I think that bill had, I know it had very unanimous bipartisan support. It only had like 2 no votes out of 193 members in both the House and Senate. So that tells you the respect, I think, the elected officials have for our state seniors. So our office also does a couple other things real quickly. Tourism is the 2nd largest industry in the state of Missouri. Agriculture is number 1. We have almost 300,000 Missourians employed in the tourism industries, and so a lot of families rely on that. We sit on the Tourism Council, and when it comes to selling things, I love to sell not only the assets of our state, but I love to sell our tourism opportunities. We brought 42 million people into the state last year to spend money in our state, and that was a $17 billion impact. So we spend a lot of time on tourism issues. We also run the Missouri Arts Council, which actually is housed in the old post office building downtown, if you know where that is. And they deliver arts programs and grants from anybody from grade school all the way up to literally veterans homes. So they cover the full spectrum of what the arts impact has in our state. And then last but not least, we run a program called Buy Missouri out of the Lieutenant Governor's office. And we just identify companies who manufacture things here in the state and then promote Missourians to maybe go take a look at those companies before they buy something else through a website called buymissouri.net. So we have about 550 members. We have Buy Missouri companies in 94 of our 114 counties and about 16,000 Missourians that work for Missouri companies that manufacture everything from toolboxes to wine to door stops to, you can't believe all the stuff that's made here in Missouri. We love to be able to promote those products. So that's what we stay busy with, working. We have 2 awards that we do each year. One is the Lieutenant Governor's Women of Achievement Award that I started after my mother. And so we pick 10 ladies out across the state each year through a committee that looks at applications and nominations to award women who have made great differences in their community. That's a program we just finished year 2. We love to do. And then we have the Lieutenant Governor Senior Service Award, which was started by Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder, oh gosh, maybe 12 or 15 years ago. And that's a great process as well. Typically, state reps and senators nominate seniors from their area who have done great things in their community. And we kind of changed that up under Governor Kinder, and this is the way it went. It worked fine. He would bring the award recipients to one day at the Capitol, and in the rotunda they'd have a big ceremony, and they'd give out these awards, and they'd recognize what these seniors had done for us across the state. And then when COVID came, that obviously didn't happen because we couldn't get together and assemble. And so we still picked out seniors, but we start going into our communities and giving the awards out. And what we found is more of their family members could come, their local TV station could come, their buddies could come to it, so we never went back the other way. So still today, and we're in the process of handing those out across the state now, we leave it as a prize, which makes it even more fun. So we go to usually whatever facility that senior has worked at and made an impact, a lot of non-for-profit facilities. We go and we have a big group of people come, and then we surprise the senior with the Senior Service Award. And those are a blast. I have some of the best memories in this office have been from surprising those men and ladies all across the state and having their family there to see it. So that's a quick recap of what we do, more probably than you want to know. But I'd be happy to take any questions. Going from one, I think we were at we had one of our Women of Achievement Award winners was down a business located on Clark Avenue. Angela Zhang, she's a Chinese American that took a literally Chinese recipe from her parents, several of them, that takes natural herbs and fruits and vegetables into energy drinks. And Angela started this business down in downtown St. Louis and employs mainly Chinese Americans. And she won this award, and that's where I want to tell you the story real quick before we came here. She now bottles, they're about the size of a plastic bottle of water. She has gotten contracts from grocery stores all over the United States. I said, Angela, how many bottles of stuff are you making now a week? She said, oh, not many, 14,600 every week. And so she has an incredible business, and so that was a cool story. And then we're going to a reception later on tonight. And then last but not least, because I'm on the Arts Council and because for 20 years, my wife and I have been season ticket holders, are going to the Muni. So we love some of the St. Louis attractions. And I'm a St. Louisan at heart. Kansas City and Springfield people always make fun of me. You're that politician from St. Louis. But St. Louis is responsible for 44% of our GDP. So that is the economic engine of the state. And I don't apologize for that. And I love trying to be up here and help, A, stay out of your way, and B, fix some problems when I can. So with that, again, it's great to be here. If anybody has any questions real quick that I can divert over to Sue, I'm happy to do that. Yes, ma'am.
What high school did you go to?
That's the same question. This will be the third time I've answered it today, so I have to have a caveat. I told you, when I answer, you're going to say, well, this guy's crazy. My mom didn't have enough money to send us to any school. My mom went and begged the Brothers of Mary to let me go to Chaminade on the work scholarship. So it was a great school. I thought my mom was sending me to prison, actually, the first day I got there. But I rode a bi-state bus while my buddies drove in their brand new Trans Am and Corvettes, and I was the first person that Chaminade gave a work scholarship to. So I worked my way through Chaminade. It was a great school. A lot of great schools here, but that was a great school. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
What is your position about foreign countries buying land in the state of Missouri?
Anybody who is on the United States has a list of enemies. If you're on the list of enemies, you should not be able to purchase land in the state of Missouri, period. Now, the issue gets really confused, and the rest of this won't fit on a bumper sticker, so I'll explain it. Back in 2013, I served with Eric Schmidt, who's now your U.S. Senator. There was a company in northwest Missouri with 1,300 employees who was being sold to a European entity. And at the time, you could not have, no foreign ownership of land was capable. And the legislature passed, and I voted on, and actually Governor Nixon vetoed it, And the House and Senate Republicans and Democrats overrode his veto, all but one vote. They had it 191 to 92. You might have been there at the time. And the vote was that foreign ownership could be up to 1% of Missouri land. And it saved 1,300 jobs in a town that couldn't lose 1,300 jobs. The problem with politics, and this is what I said earlier, is now everybody says, well, Kehoe voted to sell our land to China. Well, that's not what Kehoe did, and that's not what the other 191 representatives and senators did. We voted to allow 1% of our land to be owned by a foreign entity, and it saved jobs up in northwest Missouri. Since then, we've had this increase of enemy, whether it's Russia, Venezuela, China, and so now we're saying, let's amend this to make sure those foreign enemy countries cannot buy land at all. 0.6% of our land is owned by a foreign entity, so we haven't hit the 1% cap. And Missouri is number 2 in 50 states of family-owned farms. We have 95,000. So we haven't sold the world to China. We don't want to sell it to China, or to any of our enemies for that matter. But the commercials you'll see are a little misleading. So that's just, I believe if they're an enemy of our country, they should not be able to own land here.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
A recent Wall Street Journal article said that American students perform very poorly against their international peers. Charter schools and homeschooling, on the other hand, they perform about a 30 or 40% better than the public schools. If you were the governor, how would you lead the legislature in strengthening and expanding the charter school and homeschool movement in Missouri?
Well, that's a great question. And not because you asked the question, I'm a fan of charters and education reform, as well as the homeschool movement. And to answer your question directly, we have some great public schools across our state, at 550 K through 12 systems. So we have a lot, okay? We have some that are performing above the national and international average of how when kids graduate, according to a test score. We have some that perform way below. And I'm not suggesting Governor Parsons should do this, but your question is, if I were governor, what I would do is go to the non-performing school districts and say, you have to have a plan. We're not going to keep giving you money and you produce results where kids can't read at a 3rd grade level. It's just not right. Because I go to some of those underperforming school districts, and remember, I'm a businessman by trade, and you know what the superintendent tells me? We need more money. And I'm like, no, you don't throw more money at a problem to fix it. You're getting the same as the formula gives everybody else. And so it always comes down to follow the money and the purse strings, in my opinion. And competition is the best thing for business and for school. That's what charters have done. If you're not performing and you're not delivering a product, and the charter can deliver it, then the charter should be able to be formed. And we have charters here, as you know, in St. Louis and Kansas City, but not statewide. So I think the answer to the question of performance always comes down to compensation and money. If we're going to give you money to produce a product, we expect you to perform at the same level your other peers are at a higher level.
Would you try to encourage more charter schools in Missouri?
Yes, but not in every corner of the state, because in rural Missouri, where there's very small counties, Marys County has 6,000 people there. There's one public high school there. If you do the broad brush approach, all of a sudden you have a charter, as long as, and I should have said, in smaller counties that are also performing and their kids are getting up to the national average, are above the national average. As long as they're performing and doing the right thing, and to be honest with you, I don't think a charter would farm because there wouldn't be a need to do it. But where there's a need to do it, yes.
What role do you think the federal government has in education?
Well, the federal government plays a better role at, the higher education program. In the K through 12 system, I'm more of a fan of letting the elected officials, who are the, school board members, be the ones that make those decisions, because they're accountable to the people that are in that district. So I'm not a big fan of the feds throwing weight around in the K through 12 process. I understand that they can have some influence in the higher education. I'm not a fan of loan forgiveness and free education. I did not go to college because my family couldn't afford it. I'm not crying on my shoulder about that. That's just the way it was. But every other kids and friends of mine that I know, they worked through school, they worked through their tuition, and they got through college. So I'm not sure the federal government needs to be funding that. Opportunities are fine. Missouri, under Sue's leadership and others, has an A+ program. If you're in high school and you have a decent grade level, not stratospheric. My kids weren't stratospheric smart. you can take advantage of an A+ program and get some tuition relief at Missouri's colleges. Yes, sir.
Trade schools,
Yes, sir.
how about those?
I was on the board of State Technical College in Lynn, Missouri for 6 years, and we have some incredible trade schools across the state. I'll answer the education question and the trade school question real quickly the same way. One of our problems in K through 12 is we have counselors that are great men and ladies, so this is not a whack at counselors, that are college counselors. And we have an initiative going on now in 150 different schools where we're training counselors at Ozark Technical College in Springfield, which is a trade school, to be career counselors. Big difference between a career counselor and a college counselor. A career counselor, a young man or woman comes up and says, I want to get my CDL, I want to drive a truck, I want to get my commercial driver's license. That's where their heart is, that's what they help them do. I want to be a welder, I want an associate's degree in welding, which is a great profession in Missouri, by the way. They help them do that. I want to be an accountant, they help them do that. So a career counselor through our education system, I think, is a game changer for Missouri. We're getting there. Like I said, we're in 150 different schools. We have some incredible Rankin here in St. Louis, State Technical College in Mid-Missouri, State Fair College in Sedalia, OTC. We have some really, really good trade schools around the state that are producing kids that with the A+ program a lot of times graduate with no debt, and they walk into a $60,000 to $80,000 a year job after 2 years of training. So that's what's called workforce development, and that's what we continue to need to work on.
He just came back from the honor flight.
Oh, very good. Did you like it? Honor flight?
It's not the right word. It's outstanding.
Thank you.
Another one, this guy here and that guy on the end.
I don't know if you heard me say this, but I've been a guardian on honor flight, and I've gotten more out of it than any veterans that I've ever had the pleasure of. But 2 flights ago, I had a World War II veteran named Red Leitner. And his first name was Forrest, but he had red hair when he was a kid, and he was always just called Red. And this guy was the biggest character. He wore red socks, always had a red shirt on or something. And so most guardians have 3 veterans. I just had Red because he had some needs, and I was happy to take care of him. But on the way back, after 22 hours, so we have to take a bus from Columbia to Lambert and then a bus back. And we're going down 70, and we're 22 hours into the trip. There's no sleep or anything. I said, Red, you want to get some shut-eye? He said, hell no, I'm never going to be able to go on one of these trips again. So it was great. But thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Anything else? Yes, sir. Mike always asks the toughest questions.
You mentioned a couple times you're a politician. Is there anything on your future political?
Well, now, I'm not a politician. I tell people all the time, if I want to give you great comfort in this room, I'm not a professional politician. I'm a car dealer. Should that make you feel better? Mike asked if there's something on our radar screen. We don't get real political when we're out and about, but yes, the governor is term limited out. My wife and I have thought and prayed about that. Our kids have given us the green light, so we are working to run for that office, which is, again, something I never thought I'd do. Listen, I appreciate you guys letting me be here. Sue, thank you so much for lining this up. We're going to see West Side Story tonight. Anybody been to the Muni before? Yeah, we love that place. And my wife went and saw something last week, Chess. She didn't. I saw Beauty and the Beast earlier this year. That was fantastic. But it's a beautiful place. 11,000 people outdoors. It's one of the greatest outdoor venues in the United States. So we love to be able to celebrate what's happening in St. Louis. And I'll just tell you, it's an incredible, humbling honor to be able to serve you in this position. I told you before, very basic roots, and my mom was a huge faith person that she instilled into me, and that's what gets me through each day, and I hope my kids will help me get through at some point in my life, but also stay the course in their faith, and we are just grateful that we're able to serve the citizens of Missouri and look forward to continuing to do that. So thank you all, and God bless each one of you. Good.